My husband tried to end his life after learning my secret. My husband hates his boss. I mean, loathes him with every cell of his body. It started almost a year ago when he was transferred to his division. Since then, every evening has carried the same rhythm, the front door opening, his heavy steps across the hallway, and his voice, tired and sharp, breaking the silence with complaints about his boss. At first, I listened with sympathy. I would sit across from him at the kitchen table, nodding as he vented about unreasonable deadlines, impossible expectations, and the subtle condescension his boss used in every meeting. But over time, it became something darker. Not just frustration, but bitterness that seemed to settle into him like a sickness. He works in a very specific creative field, the kind of niche profession where there are only a handful of jobs within an entire region. He's incredibly talented, one of those rare people whose mind just sees things differently. He's paid well, respected, and on paper, everything looks perfect. But the truth is, if he wanted to leave his company and stay in the same line of work, he'd have to move halfway across the country. Our family and friends all live here. Our parents, our friends, the house we built together. Our life is here. The idea of moving wasn't just inconvenient, it was unthinkable. Still, over the last few months, I could see him breaking. He started talking about quitting altogether, even if it meant a major pay cut. I told him, honestly, that I would support him no matter what. But I could also see the guilt in his eyes. He had spent his entire adult life working toward this exact career, and the idea of throwing it away, even for his sanity, tore at him. Then came the company's annual holiday party. Last year, we were out of town, so we didn't attend. This year, though, we had no excuse. The event was scheduled for that weekend, and we decided to go. It was a massive event. Hundreds of employees, their spouses, and partners. The kind of corporate extravaganza with too many sequins, too many drinks, and laughter that always sounds just a little too loud. When we walked in, my husband's expression tightened immediately. I could tell he was already uncomfortable. He's always been a bit introverted, and these big events drain him. Still, he managed a polite smile, shaking hands, making small talk, doing his best to blend in. After a while, I excused myself and went to sit at our table while he joined a group of coworkers near the bar. The music was loud, a live band playing holiday covers that no one really listened to. I remember sitting there, glancing around the room, feeling a little detached from it all. And then I felt a light tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there stood Paul. For a moment, my brain couldn't process it. I hadn't seen Paul in years, not since college, really. My chest tightened, then released all at once. I stood up without thinking, and we hugged. It was instinctive, warm, but innocent. Paul had been my college boyfriend. We dated for over a year, long enough to know each other deeply, but not long enough to last. Our breakup had been mutual, gentle even. We were heading in different directions back then, different cities, different dreams. There was never any bad blood. Seeing him again felt surreal. He looked older, of course, a few lines at the corners of his eyes, a touch of gray at his temples, but that same easy smile. We started catching up, trading stories about where life had taken us. It felt comforting, familiar. There was no spark, no hidden emotion, just two people remembering who they used to be. We talked for quite a while, long enough for me to forget I was at a corporate party. Then he asked casually why I was there. I'm here with my husband, I said, smiling. And just like that, everything changed. His expression froze, his eyes narrowing slightly in confusion. Your husband, he asked, almost cautiously. What's his name? When I told him, I could see the shock hit him. He went pale, blinked, then asked again, as if confirming something impossible. Wait, your husband works in the design division? Yes, I said, my stomach dropping. Why? He hesitated, and that's when it clicked. The realization landed like a cold stone in my chest. Paul, my Paul from college, was the boss my husband had been complaining about for nearly a year. Paul's expression softened, almost regretful. I know him, he said simply. I didn't realize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make this awkward. He didn't press for details, and neither did I. We stood there, both a little stunned, both unsure of what to say next. Finally, he excused himself. He had to go prepare for a speech. He smiled one last time, a polite, careful smile. It was really good seeing you again, he said.
Really?
And then he walked away. That's when I felt another presence and turned to see my husband standing just a few steps behind me. He'd seen us hugging. The look on his face wasn't just confusion, it was pure, sharp anger, the kind that burns cold. "What was that?" he demanded, his voice low but trembling. "Was he hitting on you?" I froze. My heart started racing. I knew what it must have looked like, and I knew how much he already despised Paul. "No," I said quickly. "No, it's nothing like that. We just, we went to college together. I haven't seen him since then." He stared at me, his eyes searching for any hint of a lie. I watched the color drain from his face, the muscles in his jaw tightening. He turned away abruptly, muttering something under his breath. The rest of the night was unbearable. He barely looked at me. He spent most of the evening scrolling through his phone, pretending to check emails. We left right after dinner. The car ride home was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind that screams louder than words. When we got home, I tried to break the tension. "Do you want some tea?" I asked quietly, but he didn't respond. Instead, he turned to me suddenly, eyes blazing. "Why didn't you tell me you knew him?" He demanded. "How long have you two been in touch? Were you laughing about me behind my back?" The accusations came fast, one after another. His voice was rising, breaking in places. I had never seen him like that. Never. "This isn't you," I whispered, trying to stay calm. "You're tired, you're angry, but this isn't. Don't tell me what I am," he snapped, his voice cracking. I stood there, stunned. This man, the same man who used to hold me through panic attacks, who never even raised his voice in 10 years of marriage, was unraveling in front of me. Eventually, the storm passed. He broke down, his voice shaking with guilt and frustration. "I'm sorry," he said over and over. I just, I can't believe this. My boss, the one person who's made my life hell, and you?" He couldn't finish the sentence. We sat in silence for a long time that night. He apologized again before bed, but I could tell something inside him had cracked. And I knew, with terrifying clarity, that if I told him the truth about Paul, about our past relationship, he might not recover from it. I wasn't afraid for myself. Not once did I fear he'd hurt me, but I was terrified of what he might do to himself. I told myself that I wasn't lying. After all, he'd never asked about my past, and I'd never hidden it. We'd both agreed, long ago, that our past relationships didn't matter. But as I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt the first sting of guilt settle in. Because now it did matter. And I knew deep down that sooner or later it would come out. Whether Paul said something or fate found another cruel way to reveal it, the truth would surface. And when it did, I had no idea if my husband, the love of my life, would be able to survive it. The next few days were heavy. My husband barely spoke to me, except for the necessary words, short, clipped phrases about groceries, bills, or work. The air in our house felt colder, thicker somehow. Every sound, the kettle boiling, the creak of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, seemed amplified in the silence between us. I tried to keep things normal. I made breakfast, packed his lunch, kissed him goodbye at the door like I always did. But he didn't meet my eyes anymore. Sometimes he'd leave for work before dawn, sometimes not come home until late. I didn't know if he was avoiding me or just trying to survive another day under Paul's authority, and I couldn't tell which possibility hurt more. At night, when he finally came home, I'd watch him move through the house like a ghost. He'd loosen his tie, pour himself a drink, and sit at the dining table without turning on the lights. Just sit there in the dark, staring at nothing. He used to talk to me about everything, even the smallest things, like a new project or a funny moment at work. Now, there was only silence. One night, I finally asked, "How was work?" He didn't answer at first. Then, after a long pause, he said, he called me out in front of everyone again. Said my concept was too sentimental, too emotional, like that's a bad thing. He laughed, a dry, bitter sound. And then he spent 20 minutes explaining why his version of my design was better. I hesitated. "What did you say?" "Nothing," he said. "What's the point?" He took another drink and leaned back, his face hard to read in the dim light. "He knows, doesn't he?" said suddenly, his voice flat. My chest tightened. "Knows what?" "That you and him." He couldn't finish. His jaw clenched. "He's acting different around me. He's testing me. It's like he's daring me to lose control." I swallowed hard. No, he doesn't know. I promise. There's no reason for him to think. He cut me off. You think I don't see it? The way he talks to me now? Slower, careful. Like he's trying not to step on something fragile. It's pity. That's what it is. He pities me. I tried to reach for his hand, but he pulled away. That night, he slept in the guest room. For the first time in years, our bed felt enormous, cold on both sides, like no one belonged there anymore. The weeks that followed were a blur of small, painful moments. He stopped eating breakfast. He stopped laughing. He stopped looking at me altogether. At work, things got worse. He told me Paul had started reviewing all his work personally, something he'd never done before. Every presentation, every meeting, Paul was there watching. Sometimes complimenting, sometimes criticizing, but always present. It was suffocating him. And I didn't know how to fix it. One Friday evening, he came home much later than usual. I was sitting on the couch pretending to read, but really just waiting for the sound of his car. When he finally walked in, I could tell immediately that something was wrong. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled, his tie loose. Have you been drinking? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He just dropped his keys on the table and sank into a chair. Then he said, almost to himself, I can't do this anymore. Do what? This job. This life. Pretending like everything's fine when it's not? He rubbed his face, exhaling shakily. Do you know what it feels like to wake up every morning and dread breathing the same air as someone? To hate them so much you start hating yourself for it. His voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. I sat down next to him, then quit. Please. We'll figure it out. Money doesn't matter, you matter. He shook his head slowly. It's not that simple. If I leave, he wins. He'll walk around thinking he broke me. And maybe he did. I wanted to tell him that pride wasn't worth losing his peace of mind, that he didn't have to prove anything, but I knew he wouldn't listen. Instead, I said, then take some time off. Just a week. Clear your head. He didn't respond, just stared at the floor for a long time, then whispered, maybe. The following Monday, he didn't go to work. He said he needed a day. I texted my boss and told them I'd be working from home, just to be near him. He spent the morning sitting on the porch, smoking. He hadn't smoked in years. Every so often, I'd glance out the window and see him staring into the distance, motionless. At lunchtime, I made him a sandwich and brought it out. He thanked me softly, but didn't eat it. Then, around 3 in the afternoon, he finally spoke. I think I'll go for a drive. Something about his tone made me uneasy. I stood up quickly. Maybe I should come with you. He smiled, a faint, tired smile. No, it's fine. I just need some air. I'll be back before dinner. He kissed my forehead, gentle, distant, and walked out. I watched him pull out of the driveway, a strange chill running through me. That was the last time I saw him conscious. 2 hours later, I got a call from an unknown number. A calm male voice identified himself as a police officer. There had been an accident. The words didn't make sense at first. I kept saying, no, that can't be right. Like maybe if I said it enough, reality would shift. But it didn't. By the time I reached the hospital, he was in surgery. The nurse said it was a single-car collision. His car had veered off the road and hit a barrier. There were no other vehicles involved. They didn't know if it was deliberate. I waited in the sterile, fluorescent waiting room for hours, numb, clutching his wedding ring they'd handed me in a small plastic bag. When the surgeon finally came out, his face told me everything before he said a word. He's alive, he said gently, but there's been significant trauma. He's in critical condition. The next few days blurred together, machines, monitors, doctors' quiet conversations in hallways. He was unconscious, breathing through a ventilator, pale as paper. Paul came to the hospital on the 3rd day. When I saw him standing at the door, holding a bouquet that looked absurdly bright against the sterile white walls, my stomach turned. He looked wrecked. Not the polished, confident man from the company parties, but someone carrying genuine remorse. I just heard, he said softly, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him to leave, to blame him for everything, but I couldn't. I didn't have the strength. He hesitated, then asked, can I see him?
Against every instinct, I nodded. He walked to the bedside, looking down at the man who had spent months despising him. His face was unreadable. Not pity, not guilt exactly, just quiet sorrow. He was one of the best, Paul said after a long silence. I pushed him because I knew he was brilliant. I didn't know it was breaking him. He looked at me then, his eyes tired. I swear, I didn't know. I believed him. And yet, believing him didn't make it any easier to breathe. After he left, I sat by the bed and watched the monitor's green line flicker with each beat of my husband's heart. I thought about the irony of it all, how life had tangled our past and present in the cruelest way possible.
He woke up 2 days later. When I saw his eyes flutter open, relief and fear crashed into me all at once. I grabbed his hand and whispered his name. He looked at me disoriented. Where am I? In the hospital, I said softly. You had an accident. But you're okay now. You're safe. He frowned slightly, as if trying to remember something. Then his gaze drifted to the bandages on his arms, the IV line, the machines. I'm sorry, he whispered. Tears blurred my vision. You have nothing to be sorry for. But he shook his head weakly. Yes, I do. I wasn't strong enough. I let him win. I leaned closer, my voice breaking. You didn't lose. You survived. That's what matters. He closed his eyes again, exhausted. Recovery was slow. Weeks turned into months. He had to relearn how to walk without pain, how to lift his arm, how to drive again. But the physical healing wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was watching him try to forgive himself. He resigned from his job quietly, sending a single email to HR. No farewell messages, no goodbye drinks, just silence. We sold the house, moved 2 towns away. A fresh start, or as close to one as life would allow. He started therapy, reluctantly at first, then with genuine effort. Some days were good, others, not so much. Once, late at night, I asked him if he ever thought about that day, the accident. He was quiet for a long time before he said, every day. But not the crash itself, the moment before. The second I realized I was letting hate drive me more than love ever had. That's what I remember. He reached for my hand then, his grip gentle but sure. I don't want to live like that anymore. A year later, we attended a small art exhibit in a nearby city. It featured local designers and creatives, a quiet, intimate event. I wasn't sure how he'd feel being back in that kind of environment, but he surprised me. He walked through the gallery calmly, taking in the work, occasionally stopping to comment. His eyes had that old spark again, the one I hadn't seen in so long. At one display, I saw Paul's name on the placard. My heart skipped a beat. He was standing nearby, talking to a group of people. When he noticed us, his smile faltered for a second, then steadied. He approached slowly, cautiously. Hey, he said. Hey, my husband replied, surprisingly calm. There was a moment of silence, tense but not hostile. I've been following your work, Paul said quietly. It's still incredible. My husband gave a small nod. Thanks. And then, after a long pause, he added, I think we both learned something from all that. Paul's expression softened. Yeah, I think we did. They shook hands, not warmly, not as friends, but as two men who finally stopped fighting ghosts. As we left the gallery, my husband looked up at the evening sky, streaked with pink and gold. You know what? He said, almost to himself. I don't hate him anymore. I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. I know. He looked at me then, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I think that's the first real thing I've said in a long time. And as we walked to the car, his hand found mine again. Steady, alive, present. For the first time in over a year, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay.